Shawn Hornbeck was just an ordinary 11-year-old boy riding his lime green mountain bike on a crisp October afternoon in 2002. He had left his home in Richwoods, Missouri, promising to be back by dinner. But as the sun dipped behind the trees, Shawn never returned. His bike was later found abandoned along a quiet country road, the front wheel bent as though it had been tossed aside. From that moment, his small town descended into fear. Parents clutched their children tighter, volunteers searched fields and forests, and police scoured every possible lead. Days stretched into weeks, weeks into months, and then into years. The Hornbeck family refused to give up, launching the Shawn Hornbeck Foundation to help other missing children, all while desperately hoping their boy was still alive. What no one knew was that Shawn was indeed alive, but living through a nightmare few could comprehend. Hidden in plain sight, his story would eventually become one of the most shocking kidnapping cases in American history. On that October day in 2002, Shawn Hornbeck's life changed forever. As he pedaled along the rural roads of Washington County, a stranger pulled his truck alongside him. The man was Michael Devlin, a seemingly quiet, unassuming 38-year-old who worked as a pizza shop manager. But behind his ordinary exterior lay something far darker. Devlin struck Shawn's bike, knocking the boy to the ground. Stunned and terrified, Shawn was forced into the vehicle. In an instant, the childhood he knew was stolen. For his parents, the nightmare began with silence. For Shawn, it began with fear. Devlin did not kill him as many predators might. Instead, he held Shawn captive, first through violence, then through psychological control. Over the weeks and months that followed, the boy endured manipulation designed to break his spirit. Devlin instilled terror by convincing Shawn that any attempt to escape would mean death, not just for him, but for his family. That fear became a prison stronger than any lock, and so Shawn remained. Hidden inside Devlin's modest apartment, he was forced to live a double life: a missing child the world was desperately searching for, and a son under the control of his captor. In time, neighbors and acquaintances saw him with Devlin, but assumed he was simply the man's adopted boy. Nobody guessed the truth, that this was the missing child whose face had been plastered on posters for years. Even more haunting, Shawn had occasional access to freedom. He was seen in public, sometimes riding his bike again, sometimes out in the community, yet he stayed silent. Why? Because Devlin's threats had convinced him escape would cost the lives of the people he loved most. That psychological chain bound him tighter than handcuffs ever could. 4 years passed. The Hornbeck family clung to hope, never abandoning the search. Meanwhile, Shawn grew from a child into a teenager under the shadow of his abductor. His case seemed destined to become one of those unsolved tragedies, until a twist no one could have predicted shattered the darkness. By January 2007, more than 4 years had passed since Shawn Hornbeck vanished. His parents still clung to fading hope, running the Shawn Hornbeck Foundation, helping other families, and praying that someday, somehow, their son would come home. But the world had moved on. To many, Shawn's name had become just another heartbreaking case file. Then, fate intervened. On January 8, 2007, another boy, 13-year-old Ben Ownby, was abducted while walking home from his school bus stop in Franklin County, Missouri. The community erupted into action. Hundreds searched the woods, authorities issued an Amber Alert, and tips poured into the police. Among those tips was a critical piece of information. a white pickup truck seen speeding away from the area around the time Ben disappeared. Investigators began digging. Their search led them to Michael Devlin, the quiet pizza shop manager who matched the truck description. He seemed ordinary enough, but when police approached his apartment in Kirkwood, Missouri, on January 12, 2007, what they found would shock the world. Inside, they discovered not one boy, but two. There was Ben, scared but alive, and then standing silently in the corner was an older teenager. His face seemed familiar, eerily familiar. Officers asked his name, and in a trembling voice, he answered, "Shawn Hornbeck." Gasps filled the room. A boy who had been missing for 4 long years, whose parents had endured endless agony, whose picture had faded on posters and websites, was alive, standing in front of them. The news spread like wildfire. In an instant, Shawn's case was no longer a cold mystery, but a miraculous survival story. Reporters swarmed the scene, stunned that a child missing since 2002 had been found just miles from his family's home, living in plain sight all along. For Shawn's parents, Craig and Pam, the moment was indescribable. The boy they had last hugged as a child had returned as a teenager. Their prayers had been answered, but behind their tears of joy lay the unimaginable reality. Their son had endured years of captivity, manipulation, and fear that no child should ever face. The Hornbeck home filled with laughter again, but it also echoed with the weight of trauma. Shawn's rescue was miraculous, but the scars of his ordeal would linger long after the cameras faded. The rescue of Shawn Hornbeck and Ben Ownby was celebrated as a miracle across America. News outlets dubbed it the Missouri Miracle, a phrase that captured the shock of seeing not one, but 2 missing children walk back into the arms of their families. For Shawn's parents, Craig and Pam, the reunion was overwhelming. They had imagined this day 1,000 times, but nothing could prepare them for hugging their son again after 1,587 days of absence. But joy was only part of the story. Behind Shawn's quiet smile lay years of unspeakable trauma. He had entered captivity as a boy and returned as a teenager, forced to navigate not just the freedom he longed for, but the scars of psychological imprisonment. The world saw a miracle. Shawn saw a battlefield he was still walking out of. Michael Devlin, meanwhile, faced the full force of justice. Charged with multiple counts of kidnapping, sexual assault, and child exploitation, he pleaded guilty in October 2007. The judge delivered a staggering sentence: 74 life terms, plus 2,020 years in prison, a punishment designed to ensure he would never again see freedom. For many, it was justice served. For Shawn, it was the closing of a chapter that had defined nearly half his life. As the media frenzy swirled, Shawn and his family faced a new challenge: learning to heal under the spotlight. The public wanted interviews, details, answers to the unthinkable. Why didn't he escape when he had the chance? How had Devlin controlled him for so long? These questions, though natural, overlooked the complexity of trauma and fear. Shawn explained that Devlin's threats against his family were powerful enough to silence him, a chilling reminder of how psychological chains can be stronger than steel. Slowly, Shawn began reclaiming pieces of a normal life. He reunited with childhood friends, rediscovered the freedom of riding his bike without fear, and tried to live like any teenager. But normalcy was fragile. Every moment of joy was shadowed by memories of control and manipulation. Healing, he learned, was not instant. It was a long road, with victories and setbacks. Still, there was hope. By returning alive, Shawn gave courage to countless families of missing children, proving that even years later, there can still be miracles. His survival became more than a personal story. It became a symbol of resilience, strength, and the enduring power of hope. Shawn Hornbeck's survival did more than reunite a broken family. It reshaped the way the world viewed missing children. His story became a living reminder that hope should never be abandoned, no matter how many years have passed. For parents of the missing, his return was proof that miracles were possible, that sometimes the faces on faded posters could still walk back through the door. In the years that followed, the Shawn Hornbeck Foundation, established by his parents during the years of searching, continued its mission of helping other families in crisis. What began as a desperate attempt to find their son transformed into a beacon of support for countless others, offering resources, awareness, and most importantly, hope. Shawn's ordeal, though painful, became the catalyst for saving lives beyond his own. The legal outcome of Michael Devlin's case also carried weight far beyond one man's punishment. His astronomical sentence, 74 life terms plus more than 2,000 years, was a statement to predators everywhere. Crimes against children would never be met with leniency. It was also a reassurance to victims. Society had heard their cries and was willing to deliver justice on their behalf. For Shawn himself, life after captivity was not a fairy tale ending, but a complicated journey of healing. He learned that freedom did not erase memories, that laughter could coexist with pain, and that the process of rebuilding was as heroic as survival itself. His courage to speak about his experience helped dismantle misconceptions about victims of long-term abduction, teaching the public that silence does not mean consent, and that fear can chain even the strongest spirit. Today, Shawn's name is not only tied to tragedy, but also to resilience. His life stands as a testament to endurance, the love of a family who never stopped searching, and the possibility of light after the darkest storms. The boy who once disappeared into the shadows returned as living proof that even when the world writes a story as lost, it can still be rewritten. And now, after years of mystery and unimaginable pain, Shawn Hornbeck's story is solved. If this story moved you, make sure to like, comment your thoughts, and share so more people learn about Shawn's resilience and the power of never giving up hope.